Bending the wheel, we're just making a much better one. We're past the point of using wood for wheels. We're now with much better materials, obviously advanced alloys. Why not do the same thing with actually where we frame a home? So one of our primary products is our super panel system, which basically utilizes 14 gauge galvanized steel instead of your lumber components, your dimensional lumber, which is 10 times stronger than comparable 2x6 lumber construction. We cut framing labor by 33%. Actually, it's been proven it's actually more than 33%, which is significant. Energy efficient? Yes, we're energy efficient because we're able to incorporate a lot of advanced insulation and outsolation techniques that makes our panels extremely energy efficient. This is prefabricated, of course, which ensures greater quality assurance and easy setup at the job site. Very important. Why? Because we ensure angular and dimensional precision at the factory. Our panels are delivered as needed at the job site and utilized when needed. And because of that, as long as the foundation is correct, there is very little, in fact, no variance. During one of our builds, the job foreman came screaming at me saying, your longest wall, which is 60 feet long, is off. Really, I was braced for something bad. It's off by 1/32 of an inch. That I can accept. Everything arrives numbered in the sequence. It reduces waste. Very significant. We reduce over 40% of landfill waste generated at a job site. In fact, the crew that we just last worked with says, this is wonderful. The reason why is we don't have to clean up after. All we need to do is pick up our tools. We don't have to sweep up. We don't have to pick up lumber, and it's a safer, cleaner job site. And of course, it reduces time to revenue for the builder. You can finish something in 1/3 the time or less. You're going to be paid that much quicker. Our concrete-free foundation system basically relies on, this is just one example of the anchor systems that we use to be able to provide that. On the bottom, there's another one, which is a little bit more complicated, but we were just approved for seismic region 4, which basically would cover any earthquake area in the entire North American continent. We have a building coming up in this next month at 10,000 foot elevation in Colorado, which in an area where heretofore the counties were not allowing any build to take place unless it was poured concrete. Engineers reviewed it, the county reviewed it with their own engineers, they approved it. It works. Basically, our foundation system allows for a much more earth-friendly, faster way of being able to build either a permanent or semi-permanent foundation, however you want it, because no concrete is necessary. All you need to do is backfill. So we have developed a multi-purpose concrete-free foundation alternative. It's more cost-effective and every bit as durable as poured concrete foundations. There's minimal soil disruption. It's very important because soil dynamics and soil conditions basically, as long as they stay natural, the less you mess with them, the better it is for the environment and better it is for your property. It's extremely eco-friendly, minimizes impact on the environment. It's faster foundation compared to poured concrete, obviously. And it's far more versatile and better suited to modern housing needs and methodology. Modern housing needs now, what are modern housing needs? Well, we still need a roof over our heads and 4 walls to shelter us from the environment. But the way that that's being delivered right now is changing. The McMansions of 20, 30 years ago are not the American dream that it used to be. People now are finding that it's very hard to be able to become a homeowner simply because it's out of their reach economically, and the feasibility of owning a home right now, it's becoming, harder and harder for a lot of people. We're trying to solve that. So for example, which is one of the most common ways we work? A builder or a developer sends us a plan. That's exactly the plan that we built in Reno. We BIM it, which basically is we transform it with CAD to a building information model that basically builds it entirely in a 3D universe, digital 3D universe. Utilizing every single aspect of the required build. It exists in a digital form. That then, of course, it's very important that we maintain that all door and window openings are consistent and precisely aligned. And even more important, that the studs, which are separated at 24 inches on center, line up with every single, this is a very complicated roof system, lines up with every single roof truss. So there is frame-on-frame load-bearing capacity throughout. And here it is in reality. This whole frame was finished by an inexperienced four-man crew in under 7 hours, in 6 hours and 40 minutes. I had given them 8 hours to do it. I had calculated that it would take about 8 hours for somebody that, anybody that was reasonably competent enough to handle a tool could do it in 8 hours. They were a little bit apprehensive because they had never dealt with something like this, even though they had done work commercially with steel, not 14-gauge steel. It was 18-gauge and above, which is much thinner, but they took to it immediately. In fact, at the end, they were putting up a panel every 4 minutes. It's very important. If you see here, every panel is numbered and sequenced. Wall A through wall, in this case, wall J. So there's no, it's a build by numbers situation. How do we do this? Well, basically, we receive custom semi-formed 40-gauge steel components, which arrive at our shop in Mandia, where they're then cut, bent, and assembled into specific custom order super panels. This is the raw, sorry. That's how the raw material arrives. That is a proprietary form, even though it looks like a very simple C shape, but it still is. And this is the process in which basically it is assembled. Oh no, I just turned it off, didn't I? There we go, thank you. And here is, in fact, one of those Reno jobs that was just finished and off to the job site. This is how it's actually delivered. This was tarped over. But every one of these stacks represents a wall and a proper sequence. So these stacks then, once they're delivered to the job site, they're delivered in sequence. So when they need to go to specific wall A, for example, panel A1, panel A1 meets with wall panel J4. Everything is sequenced, so they're able to begin that corner and begin the process and do so flawlessly. That didn't work this well in the last build because the foundation was off. So we had to switch the actual sequence of the build, but it took only 10 minutes to do so. So even though it robbed us of 10 minutes, we were able to proceed. Strength and positioning that far surpasses SPF framing. SPF is spruce, pine, fir, normal timber. For example, here's a 6-foot wide panel. Our maximum width panels are only 8 feet. All sheathing is glued, screwed, 6 inches on center, and sealed to all steel components. We have 3 types of panels, basically. We have our regular super panels, which are clad in 1/2-inch structural OSB, which then it's coated with a acrylic, 100% acrylic waterproofing membrane. Then we use the zip from Huber Engineered Woods, 1/2-inch sheathing. And my go-to, my favorite, and the one that I would prefer to use on every single build is a 1/2-inch magnesium oxide board from Extreme Green. And the reason why is because this product right here resists, even though our fire rating now far exceeds what normal wood construction, this one almost guarantees it to become almost, I wouldn't say fireproof, but nearly so. Waterproof, vermin-proof, it's almost eternal. This is a very important point. Why use steel instead of wood? For many reasons. For an environmental point of view, steel is an endlessly recyclable material. You can get it from a junkyard and basically, 7 cars will be able to yield as much steel as I need to be able to build a 2,000 square foot home. Whereas you would need almost 4 or 5 acres of trees to be able to do the same. But at the same time, and more importantly, the durability, length of service, and other properties that steel provides are far superior to wood. In particular, using 14-gauge, spaced, the structural element spaced at 24 inches on center, the axial and lateral loads, for example, at 40 pounds per square foot wind pressure, Our 14 gauge spaced at 24 inches outperforms 16 gauge spaced at 16 inches on center. This is significant because 16 gauge even outperforms 2x6 regular wood by a lot. Here's another example of another build for a big, where we show that this was the design, one of the BIM models that we used. Here's the reality. So you can see that from mouse to reality, it worked flawlessly. Flat pack RTA ADUs. What's an ADU? An ADU is an accessory dwelling unit. Flat pack in RTA means flat pack ready to assemble, very much like an IKEA or something piece of furniture. We're able to pack a home or an assisted dwelling unit or a home of relatively any size into a delivery system that allows you to be able to have the entire structural package, including some finishing components, arrive at the job site all in one shot. Very important because this allows us to be able to access previously very inaccessible locations. So instead of being able to deliver the entire built unit and drop it, which takes a lot of logistics and a lot of cost, we're able to take it piece by piece and achieve the same thing with a lot less cost. Here, for example, is a model for California and Florida, which basically meets this is an under 500 square foot home that can be built in under 3 days. This is the actual structural package of how the home arrives. This is another version of that, but it's under 500 square feet to just come under there's a California school board assessment fee, which anything above 500, it kicks in after 500 square feet. If you do it under 500, then you don't have to pay that. And here's that same building. Again, this is a building that the foundation can be built in a day or so. The rest of the home can be built in 1 or 2 days. This is the exact same building, just a different roof. So it goes to show you that basically even using the exact same structural package, all you need to do is just change up a few design elements that gives you a completely different look for an entirely different purpose. Who are we? Well, my name is Juan Dominguez. I am the CEO, founder, and inventor. I've been an architect engineer for a long time. And my partner is Jared Stover. We met here I'm not originally, obviously, from Bismarck, but I'm very happy to be here in North Dakota. I'm originally from Argentina. Believe it or not, the weather's not that different from North Dakota, from the area of Argentina that I'm from. Southern Argentina, it's extremely cold. So I took to living here, fairly easy. I love it here. And basically, that's our team. I'll open it up to questions then. Well, thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, JC. Appreciate you guys. If you want to grab a seat here, and I'll sit right next to you. And Jared, his co-founder, is right here, so just wanted to point him out as well. And Tyler's going to be running the mic, so if you have a question, feel free to ask him. So you're from Argentina.
Yes.
Where did you come up with the name for Nordic Steel?
That's most people think because of the Nordic influence here in North. Actually, my father, almost 60 years ago, imported one of the first aftermarket AC units for vehicles to Argentina. The manufacturer was called Nordic. And and it was Nordic Air, and I remember going to his office, into his little factory, and every day, and I would see Nordic, 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 and it just stuck.
Cool, very cool. Got a question from Kate.
Yeah, awesome system. I'm really excited about your accessory dwelling unit flat pack. And we're hearing from like AARP and other people that those small, granny flats and stuff are really going to be important coming up, and Bismarck just changed our ordinance to have those accessory dwelling units. So are you seeing a market for those up here and not just in warmer areas?
North Dakota is one of those states that basically seems to resist change, or at least seems to resist a lot of innovation until it's forced on them by either, well, economic necessity or by the fact that people just make it happen. Governor Brown, former Governor Brown of California, just basically instituted a new law that allowed for the subdivision of existing real estate to be able to allow for ADUs, something that was previously not allowed practically anywhere in the country. That is being done in a lot of metropolitan areas. That is where we're going to focus our energy in, because that is where we see our ready market. We have done almost zero marketing. However, our biggest impact is going to be in being able to provide value and ease of delivery, economic feasibility, and something that is going to be able to just be built rather fast, but be far more cost efficient and outlive anything else built through any other method. Yes.
Go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
That's okay. This is fantastic. Can you tell me how, on just an average panel, how heavy are they, and what method do you use to get them from the flatbed truck or the flatbed trailer to the site?
That's a good question. Our panels are heavy. They're not necessarily, well, they're heavy simply because they already come pre-sheathed, meaning that the plywood or OSB component, whether it's magnesium oxide or plywood or zip, already comes attached. Now, we use a lot of screws and we glue it, and it's a very rigid, but it's not much necessarily heavier than the same thing comparable to a wooden panel and built in the same way. The only thing is that typically those are built at the site. The one build in Reno, the crew that were there, they must have been 4'11", 4 guys. If I could clone them, I would start manufacturing them. Because they were, no, they were phenomenal. They were picking them up like I couldn't believe it. What we do is we try to basically make sure that we're not going to outsize the panel for the location. So instead of making one 8-foot panel, one 8-foot wide panel, we'll maybe make 2 4-footers. And we always make an adjustable 2-foot panel to be able to take advantage or deal with unforeseen problems at the job site that allows you to be able to expand or contract to be able to meet that. In this last build, we were fortunate where, like I said, that variance was only 1/32 of an inch over 60 feet. But in other job sites, that may be an inch or more. The foundation did have a problem. We were able to just fix it by switching the sequence of how we were going to build. But yes, typically a forklift will do it. Otherwise, there is a very simple, I'm designing a type of a dolly that will actually provide the customer with, that allows 2 people just to walk even the heaviest panel and roll it over practically any terrain. Yes.
Yeah, just a quick question, or a couple questions on, one is, I know you said you guys don't do much marketing. How are you guys finding the projects now, and how are you guys going about rolling out as you scale up and finding more, how do you connect with some of those places in California and even down in Reno?
The reason why we haven't done much marketing is because we needed to have proof of concept. We needed to be able to show that we had a couple of builds. Well, how do you get those builds without putting yourself out there? Believe it or not, what happened is I had placed one small, modest cabin on eBay. That one generated an enormous amount of traffic. And somehow, I don't know how I worked the secret sauce into the SEO of my original website that I did with GoDaddy. I suck at that. But for some reason, that just developed an enormous amount of traffic. And even though, like I said, we were spending zero money. That, and of course, social media, a Facebook page, kind of helps. But other than that, yes, we've garnered like 100% of our interest. From states like California, Arizona, Colorado, Wyoming. Nothing here so far, but we're looking to change that immediately. It's something that we need to be able to make sure that now that we have the facility to be able to make these panels happen and do it in a way that we're able to deliver and satisfy the customer's expectations, we can begin marketing and scaling up as necessary.
I want to piggyback on that, JC, and ask you about, now that you're going ahead with some marketing, there are so many pros, it sounds like, to this system. What do you find is the most needed or most desired pro for this system? Like, for example, you use the word eco-minimal,
Yes.
the strength, the speed of install, less waste. What is your strongest suit?
Well, all of those will stand on their own, but I would say that the most important right now is that comparably, I mean, on a price comparison, we're pretty much the same as your standard build, but ultimately will be cheaper because we're able to build it much faster. So your cost for labor and your costs for all the incidentals that require that building to happen. For example, a developer has 100 buildings, has them scheduled to basically finish every one of them in 45 days. Well, he's got to finance them, every one of them, for 45 days. Well, if you can only have to finance them for 20 days, that saves him a lot of money. Yeah. His time to revenue is that much faster, so his ROI is that much better. So in essence, it's hard to pick one. I just like, from my standpoint, I like the ease of construction and the durability and the value that it represents over time. This is something that is designed to last centuries, not decades, and you can pass along to your great-grandkids without really many major issues. Most homes built today, still using the old methodology, will develop issues almost before they're even finished. And that's something we want to get away from. It's something that basically wants to tackle not just housing affordability, but also the quality of housing being delivered. Affordable housing doesn't have to be cheap-made housing.
Right. Cool. And you kind of answered my next question, but I was thinking, all these benefits you've talked about are great for the home buyer, and I thought, are there any drawbacks for the construction, the contractor? But you're saying because they don't have to finance for as long, it's of interest to them because they want to.
Well, these builds in Reno were proof positive of everything that we were saying that had to be yet to be proven, and it actually happened faster and better than we anticipated. There's always going to be some resistance to change. Builders are not necessarily wanting to immediately just pivot and change and adopt a new methodology. In fact, one of the guys that was there was telling me about how when pneumatic nailers first made an appearance, the builders, the old carpenters, had a bag of nails, stuck nails in their mouth and kept, they would leave them there for free. They wouldn't touch them until one guy finally picked it up and said, okay, this works. But it took a long time to convince them. So in this case, you're changing a lot of modalities. You're changing the way that they purchase lumber, the logistics that they employ, the number of people they hire. Not to bash the building industry, but in essence, the building industry is one of the few things that allows for the sale of a mediocre product to be sold for top dollar. And also, again, not to broad brush, I'm not going to rant against builders, but a lot of builders will do the following. You're building a home. You come to me, okay, great. Here's your lumber package. Your lumber package is going to include 125%, that extra 25% for incidental breakage, for poor quality, and that's always going to happen. You will never get that 25% back if I'm not using that 125%. In fact, I may use maybe 89 to 90% of that. So I'll have a surplus of lumber left over. Do you get it back? Do I credit you back for that? No, that gets rolled over into the next build. And that just becomes a snowball. So that's another trick, one of the many tricks they use to be able to, pad their numbers. They're not going to have that ability to do that anymore because in essence, there's no such waste. There's no such planning for that type of waste. And material and labor predictions are that much easier to do and calculate. A great example, 3 years ago, we had a couple that was going to be my first build here in North Dakota. That's like a nice cabin that was going to be north of Lake Sibley. We engaged a local builder of great reputation, yet they couldn't get past the fact that they're not going to need to have 10 people framing for 20 days. They're only going to need a crew of 4 for 2 days. They still build them for 10 people framing for 20 days. So when we got back to that and said, look, why? Oh, well, because that's how we do it always. Well, that's part of the, unfortunately, of some of the things that, even though with a very reputable, great builder, they weren't able to see past that immediately.
Got a question over here?
Yes.
A lot of questions. So, first one, are you a supplier? Are you a subcontractor? Would you do general contracting services?
No, we're a component manufacturer.
Okay.
Basically, what we do is we receive your plans. We then manufacture the components to conform to those plans. If you want us to be able to line up a contractor, or act as a GC, we don't do that. However, we can and do help people be able to obtain either a GC or basically be able to act as their own GCs themselves. We make it simple so people can do that.
So the labor does not come with your product to install it, or when we purchase your product, it's installed by your people, or?
Well, even though I've been there at every build that we've ever had so far, that's just to ensure that everything went along smoothly. And it was, even though it was not necessarily necessary, it was. No, we're going to provide a guide, and we're going to make it so simple that basically it will be a paint-by-number type of situation. We're going to dumb it down to the point where basically if you're not able to install this panel, you shouldn't be holding tools.
Another question. All the models I saw on the screen, I didn't see any two-story buildings. Can you do two-story buildings?
Absolutely. In fact, we can do 4 or 5-story buildings. We're rated up to 10 stories.
Awesome. What do you do about the fluctuation in the cost of steel? How does that impact your?
Thanks for asking, because a little over a year ago when the tariffs kicked in, and basically we rely on other forming partners to be able to produce the components that we need up to 80%. We finish the remaining 20% in our facility. That steel, simply because of the tariffs imposed last year, shot up by 300%. The reason why is because the grade of steel that we use, 16 and 14 gauge, we're now using exclusively 14 gauge, fell out of a range where appliance manufacturers and other types of light gauge steel manufacturers weren't using that thickness. They were using lighter gauges. So ours kind of escaped the pressures of that immediate rush to buy everything available by the big users. But it's still, the impact of those tariffs still hit everybody broadly. Our prices, tripled. We were hit, our initial forming partner decided to raise our prices by over 300%. We were almost overnight out of business. But fortunately, since the tariffs with Mexico and Canada have been rescinded, it has opened up, it's done a very important thing. It's opened up for American production of steel. Again, steel is an endlessly recyclable commodity, and we have a lot of it. So our ability to get steel and get 14-gauge steel has not been impeded. In fact, our prices have improved significantly.
Okay, last question. Your foundation system.
Yes.
Is how do you deal with differential settling, or the potential for that?
Well, soil dynamics are very important to be able to, like with any foundation, you need to be able to understand what kind of soil you're building in. Whether it's going to be a poured concrete monolithic foundation or you're going to just drive piles into the ground. You need to be able to understand what you're dealing with. As long as you're able to hit solid ground, our foundation systems, because of the fact that it employs many contact points that don't necessarily rely on just one continuous monolithic structure, it reacts much less to soil dynamics than it otherwise would. So one of our first builds was just on the edge of the Snake River in Wyoming, south of Jackson Hole, in a very marshy area. And the people that were putting in these foundations, our anchors, were saying, this will sink in 3 days. This will just get it, mire it. It's still there after 3 years. In fact, one of the anchors that they had put in was put in the wrong location. They used a crane to try and remove it, thinking that they were just going to be able to pull it out of the ground. It upended the crane. And we're not using any concrete, we're just backfilling. The cruciform shape of the actual anchor and its actual, geometry acts as a force multiplier to handle not just moment loads, but uplift loads and torsion loads. So successfully, I mean, that it surprised me. We were just, like I said, approved for a close to 10,000 altitude build in Colorado, where previously nothing other than just a poured concrete foundation was going to work. Their engineers looked at our plans, looked at over my foundation plans, and they gave it a thumbs up. In fact, I over-engineered it. They dialed it back a bit and still made it work. We go to below frost depth, whatever that local frost depth is, and as long as we hit, like any other foundation, firm ground. But we're able to deal with much more expansive and soils and much pier foundations are nothing new. I didn't invent this concept. I mean, it's been around. Venice has been around for 1,200 years. It's still standing. I did a lot of coastal building in Central America, in West Africa, and in South Florida, and these were not, inexpensive homes. These were rather costly homes that were built on piers specifically to deal with, of course, storm surge, tidal conditions, and of course, being on the coast. But these are homes that have withstood the ravages of the weather and time fairly well.
You got another question right there?
Yes.
Where is your guys' manufacturing facility at?
Our assembly plant is in Mandan.
Made in Mandan.
Made in Mandan.
So I got a quick question, JC. So two-man team. So you guys are doing product development, you're doing sales, you're doing design work. When do you have time to actually make these panels, or when are you going to have to start hiring people?
Well, earlier this year, I put in a 40-hour week in just 2 days. It's tough. When it comes to the assembly process, that can be handled by practically anybody. It's not a steep learning curve. Obviously, the engineering and architecture, that's a different matter altogether. When I receive a plan, I'm the only guy that basically is able to transform that plan into something that can work within our system. But fortunately, I was able to design a new methodology that allows me to be able to do that rather fast. So I've already BIM'd and CAD'd everything that needed to be able to ever do that, grab those components. There's a fabulous new program that is giving SolidWorks a run for its money, but that it allows me to be able to do that with enormous precision. So it saves time, but definitely we need to hire people. We need people.
JC, first, awesome presentation. I've seen you present. I know how enthusiastic you are, and I cleared my schedule this morning just knowing how you usually go on. So awesome job. I guess this kind of piggybacks a little bit on the last question, and that's scaling. What I could see happening pretty easily is you find a developer, a big builder that's going to work with your product a couple times and going to say, "Holy cow, this is so awesome! I'm going to structure my process around that and capture as much of your product as possible." How quickly can you scale, and what does that plan look like?
Well, that would entail some rather interesting contractual legalese, because we would then have to figure out how we're going to be able to supply that individual. But to answer that question, we would need to be able to sit down with those individuals. We're clearly not ready to scale to do 1,000 homes right now. We can do 100, but not 1,000. It's a simple matter of being able to, again, hire people. We have the space, and if we need to, I think we can locate additional space. One of the things that we're entertaining, instead of having one large space, we can maybe have multiple locations that are in different, areas within North Dakota along the I-94, I-29 corridor that allows us to be able to take advantage of local labor and local facilities without having to build a giant one. So that's a way of being able to scale. Yes.
Sorry, two more questions.
This is your last question.
Well, so you mentioned the program that you use. You didn't mention it by name. Can I take a guess? Is it SketchUp?
It's the new SketchUp Pro that allows me, it's with the new extensions. I got together with them about 6 months ago. In fact, they sent me socks, glasses, and a bunch of stuff. Because I was able to help them write a new sequence in their coding that allows to be able to group specific components once they're done. And the reason why is because that program, if it required a lot of polygons to actually render anything, would run into, such high utilization of memory that it...
I'm familiar. I used to be a pretty heavy SketchUp user.
Okay.
Yeah, myself.
So, yes, it's for the purposes, now I'm able to then design components down to a fraction of a millimeter, catalog those components, and then recall them at will.
Cool. Okay, last question. Are you bringing all the materials to Mandan, assembling them, and then sending out to a job site? Let's say it's in Seattle, or what's that supply?
Currently, that's exactly what we're doing. Our forming partners are in South Dakota. We get a delivery of the steel that's, like I said, 80% formed. Then everything else is sourced locally. Again, when it comes to being able to provide other materials that we don't necessarily manufacture, wherever that build is, we'll source those materials locally for them. The two cabins that were built just south of Jackson Hole, it just so happened that, fortunately for them, there was a truss plant 3 miles away. So we didn't have to ship trusses all the way from North Dakota to Wyoming. They had trusses readily available there. And so anytime that we need to be able to supply anything that is outside of what we ourselves manufacture, if we can package it here, great. But if we can package it locally and source it locally for them, it saves a lot of money and time.
I want to wrap it back in before this question.
I was just kind of curious how do you run the wiring and plumbing, or do they need special tools?
Oh, thank you for asking. Every panel is pre-bored to run whatever type of wiring you want, whether flexible cable, EMT, or Romex. If it's just going to be Romex, we supply hard Teflon grommets that are run directly through the steel. You don't want to bore too many holes in the steel. Even though it's 14 gauge, we can still bore up to a 3-inch hole. We typically just go 1 inch. That'll handle 99% of all residential needs. And that is, again, pre-bored. So once it's delivered to the job site, your subs, your electrical subs and your plumbers then only have half a job, because everything is already pre-drilled. All they have to do is just run the wire, EMT or flex, armored flex.
How about R value? What's the maximum?
Okay, since this is a nominal 2x6, we have 3 widths of panels. One that matches a 2x4, 2x6, and one that 2x8. The 2x8 and 2x4s are special order panels. We can only get a maximum of R28. Anybody that tells you that within a 5.5-inch space you can get more than R28 is simply lying. And that is max. That is under the perfect conditions using 2-pound closed cell foam. And honestly, I would say we can get R25 consistently.
Also, I noticed you had wood rafters. Now, are you thinking of manufacturing rafters as well?
Well, wood still has a very important role to play in modern construction, where it makes the most sense. Engineered wood components like LVLs, glue lams, Versa lams, or of course TJI joists or roof joists, trusses. Yes, we don't manufacture those. We contract those out, and those, of course, are engineered as well. And they're just put together as part of a package, and then everything is designed to work together utilizing those specific components. The one build in Colorado right now, I had originally designed with 11 and 7/8 inch tall TJIs and other floor components. They came back saying I only needed 9.5. Great, it's within the parameters of commercially available engineered wood components, so it's a very easy change. No, those are procured elsewhere.
So we're going to ask one last question, but before we do, I want to loop everyone else back in, because I know for most of us this is really fascinating stuff, and the way you're presenting is awesome. But I want to wrap this back up and say that as an innovator, you've encountered a lot of pushback from the industry that still wants to use wood, that wants to use what they're used to, and resistant to change. How have you persevered in a way that can encourage this group to continue doing their thing, even though people are resistant to it?
I believe in what I'm doing so much that I want to force feed it to everybody. But one of the ways that you don't want to change somebody's mind is by beating them over the head with it. So in essence, those people that give me, I try to see where they're coming from. If the pushback is because, well, this is going to really mess with my way of bilking the customer, I don't want to deal with you. If this is going to really change my modality, it's going to be so much of a shift in the way I'm used to doing things, well, then I'll get back to you and I'll work with you in a way that basically will begin to show you this is how maybe changing this will help you, get better returns, maximize your efficiency, be able to deliver a better product. Ultimately, what's going to help builders right now differentiate themselves from the rest of the pack? Everybody's building the same thing, using the same things. Up until 5 years ago, you wouldn't see any of the green zip board OSB products being used. Now you see it everywhere. Why? Because builders are now recognizing that's a far superior product than just your regular 7/16 OSB. They want to differentiate themselves from the rest of the pack, and hopefully somebody will recognize, hey, I can save money, I can deliver a better product to the customer will be much happier, my reputation will be enhanced, and this is something that is already proven and it's been shown that to work, and it's not something so far or so exotic that I can't see my way of how it's going to actually function. It's not an easy pill to swallow initially, but once it is, it's life-changing for them.
Tyler, will you ask the last question for us?
Absolutely. JC, thank you for presenting today.
Thank you.
One thing I'm very impressed with, if anybody's talked to JC about Nordic Steel Systems, he's very excited about it, very knowledgeable about it. For him to keep his presentation under 12 minutes, I'm incredibly impressed, JC, that you managed to do that. So, again, thank you for being here today. And our last question we always ask is, how can our 1 Million Cups community here in Bismarck and Mandan support Nordic Steel Systems growing and moving forward?
Gosh, you guys have already done, like I said, this is my second time here. The first time was over 4 years. I love North Dakota. I love Bismarck for many reasons, primarily because this is a very welcoming community. This is a community that basically is open to new things. They're not necessarily open to immediate adoption of those new things, but at least are willing to hear about it. Other markets and other venues may be more, faster on the uptake, but I'd rather be here. And one of the things that, Innovate ND and, of course, 1 Million Cups have done is provided a lot of context, a lot of feedback. I always learn from feedback and from questions that I receive. I've been doing this for a long time, but even so, every time I encounter somebody, I always pick something up new or get some insight that I didn't think about before.
Cool. Thank you.
Thanks so much. Give JC a hand.
Thank you.
And Jared, Nordic Steel Systems. Appreciate you coming out. Come back next week. We'll look forward to seeing you. Thank you.